I'm
Welcome
ready.
back to Ladies of Another View on Beck. We are joined by Clint Hill, and we're going to follow up a little bit deeper now that we had him on the hometown segment. So he agreed to stay and fill us in a little bit about his lifestyle. On the break, we talked a little bit about the Painted Woods Creek. Now, Clint, you had made a comment that you just loved getting back to Washburn and had all kinds of fond memories growing up in Washburn, North Dakota.
I certainly did. Back in those days, Washburn was a very great little city. We had you didn't have to go to Bismarck to buy something that you wanted. We had what they called dry goods stores, which were clothing stores. We had a number of grocery stores, hardware stores, gas stations, car dealers, restaurants, barber shops. There are many more at that time, I'm sure, than there are now. Everybody was represented in all the industries, and it was a great place to grow up. I loved it.
So when I went to Washburn to try to find stories from Washburn, I ran into Tim Doctor at Doc's shop, and then I also ran into Tom Merkel, and they had both mentioned you. But when you mentioned barbershop, Tom was a barber for 60 years, so I'm guessing Tom had a chance to cut your hair.
No, I don't think so.
No?
The barbers I dealt with were Hank Wall and Mr. Gross. They had two different shops across the street from each other. And Hank, when I was a real young kid, if I moved the way he didn't want me to move, he'd hit me in the head with the clippers and straighten me out. So that was quite a time.
Oh, sure, and nowadays there'd be a lawsuit.
Yeah, true.
They really knew how to keep us in line back in those days, didn't they?
Well, they did. And that was one thing about a small town like Washburn. When I left there to go to college in 1950, the population, the sign right outside of Washburn said, Washburn, North Dakota, POP for population dash 912. And that was about the biggest town around, except for Bismarck, Minot, Fargo, Grand Forks, and Williston and Dickinson. And so I thought we lived in a pretty good-sized town. And everything was there. We didn't need to go anywhere else if we didn't want to.
But when I was up there, they also had said that there used to be 4 grocery stores in Washburn, and now they're down to 1. But the deal with, with COVID, I hate to bring that up, but this last year, the hardware store downtown, they did so well because people aren't running out to the big box stores. So I think you should be pleased to know that your town is surviving very, very well amidst all the turmoil that's going on in our world today.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I even, my first job in Washburn was, I was a real young teenager. I must have been about 13 or so, 14. And I got a job by Holton Mercantile. They had a group of offices above their store, right on the corner of what was Main Street. And I was hired to sweep the floor and the stairway. And for that, I received 18.5 cents an hour. And I did it once a week. And so I saved that money so that I could buy Christmas presents for my sister, mother, and father. So it was a wonderful time.
That's very admirable, and it sounds like your character carried over into your employment as an adult.
Well, hopefully it did. The basics was learned right there in Washburn. Everything: treat others fairly, be honest, don't lie. I taught by my father. Whatever you do, finish the job. Just work as hard as you can. Do the best job you can. Maybe it won't be perfect, but it'll be the best you can do. So that's the way I've gone through life.
Those are good words to live by. It doesn't matter if you're a janitor or the president or anything in between. Just be the best janitor you can be, or be the best president, or be the best teacher, whatever it is, just be the best you can be. Excellent words.
That's my philosophy.
All right, and you had told us earlier that you actually skated on the Painted Woods Creek. Tell us about that.
Oh, sure, because it was the longest expanse we had in the area. Missouri River, which runs right past Washburn, would freeze over, but you didn't dare go out on it because you never knew where there was an air hole and you were going to fall through. If you did, it was goodbye. So we skated on Painted Woods Creek. Not a lot of us did that. We also played hockey. We pick up hockey with a bunch of kids, a tin can, and played on the. They would flood it was about a half a block of near downtown, and they would just flood it in the fall, let it freeze over, and that was our skating rink. And we all went there. They'd build a bonfire somewhere near there, and we'd run over there and keep warm and go back and skate for an hour or whatever. It was just a marvelous time.
Oh, those are wonderful childhood memories. We just need to get back to more memories like that, or more activities like that. Now everybody is so worried you'd have to have a fire department or a permit to light the fire.
Or something electronic.
Right? So,
Yeah,
all right, what's your fondest memory of Washburn?
Oh, I have so many that it's hard to say the fondest memory. I don't know.
You were involved in sports as well, though, weren't you? Quite the
Yeah,
athlete.
I played basketball, football, ran track, played on the junior American Legion baseball team, and I went on to play football and baseball in college. So those were memorable times. We weren't the greatest, but we did our best, and we did all right against places like Underwood and Garrison. Elbow Woods was a school at that time at Fort Berthold Indian Reservation. They were always usually the best. And Wilton was another competitor, Turtle Lake, McCluskey. So we had a good time doing that. When we, once in a while, we'd get a chance to play against somebody like Bismarck, and we realized at that time we weren't that good.
That's that Class A, Class B mentality, right?
Yeah, it was, and we my high school graduating class only had 18 students, so there wasn't a lot of people to pick from. Most of the kids were, a lot of the boys didn't even go to high school; they just worked on the farm.
Oh, sure.
So those are
sounds
different
reasonable.
times.
Yeah, I know my parents had an 8th grade education and later got their GEDs. So, and my dad was in the Korean War as well. So it just brings up a lot of memories. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break now, but after we come back on Ladies of Another View, we are going to get into a little more detail about what happened in November 1963 in Dallas. That's coming up next on Ladies of Another View on Beck.
Respect, innovation, trust, and excellence. These core values can be seen in every building built by Straightway Construction. In the community for over 15 years, Straightway Construction has become the premier construction company for commercial projects. From dirt to design and framing to finish, Straightway Construction is your #1 choice. You won't have to look far to find a project that has that Straightway touch. Call them today or go online to straightwayconstruction.com and let them make your vision a reality.
If you don't know what's going on in education in this country, then you don't know what's going to happen in the future of this country. And it's important. I'm Dr. Duke.
And I'm Katie.
Watch the Dr. Duke Show weekdays at 4 p.m. Central Time on Beck TV.
Hi, I'm Dennis Haugen, along with my sons Andy and Mike, and we're showing our support for wind energy in North Dakota.
Wind energy has provided farmers like us with a steady stream of income that's not tied to the weather like crops and cattle are.
Another bonus is that wind farm owners are required to maintain the roads leading up to the turbines. Because of that, oftentimes these roads are the best in the county. Wind energy is good for landowners, it's good for the land, it's good for our economy, and it's good for North Dakota.
I'm Rick Becker from No Apologies. Welcome to your after hours oasis of sanity. How can these people not see that they're just clowns?
We help simplify and educate you on things going on in the legislature and around the country.
Asking the hard-hitting questions.
But also having Lee Stack and Sid and Marty Croft stuff, and we've talked about that sometimes. It's bad.
Watch us weeknights at 9 Central on Beck News and online at beck.news.
Pub 21, your one stop for fun, drinks, and food.
Our spacious facility provides COVID-safe fun for you and all your friends. With nightly bingo and specials, you can be sure there's something to do for everyone. If you're staying in for the night, we've got you covered just across the way with Pub 21 Liquor. We have a wide variety of options, from wine to whiskey and everything in between. Stop in today at 1014 South 12th Street in Bismarck to see what all the buzz is about. You won't be disappointed.
40 years ago, Aero Service Team started with one truck and lots of hard work.
Times may have changed, but the hard work that we put in to get your lives back in order after fire, water, and disaster hasn't.
Over the years, we've seen so many families lose their belongings due to water and fire damage. Restoring homes back to the original state has made every hour of hard work well worth it.
Thank you for trusting our family with yours.
When disaster strikes, you only have to make one call. Aero Service Team does it all.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Back. We are continuing our interview with Clint Hill of Washburn, North Dakota, via the West Coast. Clint, we were just visiting a little bit about how important it is to live in a small town or acknowledge the small towns. But why don't you go into the details of what happened on November 22nd, 1963?
Well, this was a day that I was in the Secret Service, and we brought the President Kennedy and his wife, Mrs. Kennedy, to Texas on the 21st. We went to San Antonio and Houston, and then ended up in Fort Worth the night of the 21st. And then on the 22nd, got up in Fort Worth and flew over to Dallas for a large motorcade in Dallas and a speech to be given by the president at a luncheon at the Trade Mart in Dallas. And my job on this trip, and for the years that the Kennedy administration was in office, was to protect Mrs. Kennedy and the children, make sure that they were okay. So on this day, we arrived in Dallas. It was sunny. It had been raining, but it quit. So we had an open car for the president and the governor and their wives, and an open car for the Secret Service follow-up car. And we'd been instructed by the president that he didn't want the agents up too close because he didn't want it to appear there was anything between himself and the voters, the general populace. And so we, instead of being up on the back of the presidential car for this motorcade, we were all back on the Secret Service follow-up car, which was immediately behind the president's car. Our drivers were so good that they were able to keep the two cars separated by only about 36 inches, even no matter what the speed was where we were traveling. So we started the motorcade from Love Field in Dallas. There was a large crowd along the way. By the time we got down to Main Street, it was even larger. Couldn't even be contained on sidewalks that were into the street. People were hanging out of windows of buildings. They were on top of buildings. They were on fire escapes, everywhere they could be to get a glimpse of the president and Mrs. Kennedy. We got to the end of Main Street. We had to turn right on Houston Street and then a left on Elm Street to get onto a thoroughfare to go to the speech site called the Trade Mart. When we turned right on Houston, we had to go about a block and a half, and then a sharp turn to the left on Elm Street. And it just so happened there was a building right there in that corner called the Texas School Book Depository. And as we were traveling down M Street, we had just exited Houston. We had gotten about maybe 150, 200 feet down Elm. I was on the left-hand side of the follow-up car behind the president's car. I was on a running board on the left-hand side because that put me the closest to Mrs. Kennedy. And I was surveying the crowd, which was kind of sparse on the left side. Weren't many people on an overpass we were going to go under. And all of a sudden I heard a noise coming from the right rear. It was an explosive noise. I didn't recognize what it was at first because in this area there was such an echo. So I started to turn like all the other agents did to see if we could identify what the noise was and where it was coming from. And when I did that, I turned to my right, and my eyes had to cross the back of the presidential vehicle. And so I saw the president react. He was seated on the right rear seat in the car, and he grabbed at his throat like this, and he started to fall to his left. I then recognized it had to have been a gunshot. So I jumped from my position on the follow-up car, ran toward the presidential vehicle with the intent to get up on the back of the vehicle to form a barrier there to protect both President and Mrs. Kennedy. They were seated side by side. Just as I got to the car, the driver accelerated, the car jerked, so I slipped. But I was able to recover, and I got back up on the back of the car. As I did that, Mrs. Kennedy got out of her seat, came up on the trunk. She was trying to grab some of the material that had come out of a wound from the president's head. The third shot had hit the president in the back of the head, back ear, and exited above the ear. Massive amounts of blood and bone fragments and brain matter came out of that wound, and that's what she was trying to grab a hold of. And so I got hold of her, got her back in the back seat, and then when I did that, the president's body fell farther to his left, and his head ended up in her lap. When I was up there, I looked down, I could see in the hole in his head there was no more brain material left in that area, and I assumed it is a fatal shot. I screamed at the driver to get us to a hospital, and he accelerated even more. Chief Curry, the chief of police in Dallas, got in front of us with a lead car and guided us to a Parkland Hospital, which was right next to the freeway we were trying to get on. And so we got there in a matter of just a couple of minutes, few minutes, and when we got there, there was nobody there to meet us. When we got to the emergency room, there was one of the advance agents jumped out of the car in front of the president's car and ran into the emergency room and found there was an attendant trying to bring out 2 gurneys because the governor had also been shot. So when we got the gurneys out to the car, then the job was to remove Governor Connolly first, because he was seated in front of President Kennedy, and his back, the back of his seat, was right against the president's knees. So we couldn't move the president until we moved the governor. We got the governor up in the gurney, and they took him into the trauma room. Then I said to Mrs. Kennedy, I said, Mrs. Kennedy, we need to help the president. Please let go, because she was holding on to his body. I got no response at all. So I pleaded with her again. I said, please, Mrs. Kennedy, let us help the president. And I got nothing. So I realized I'd been with her for since November of 1960, and this was 63. And so I've been with her long enough. I knew her pretty well. I recognized she did not want anybody to see the condition he was in. It was deplorable. And so I took off my suit coat. I covered up his head and his upper back. As soon as I did that, she let go. We lifted him up, put him on a gurney, and ran into the trauma room. Put him in trauma room 1. The doctors started arriving from all over the hospital and in an attempt to do what they could for him. And by 1 o'clock, the doctors came out of the trauma room and said, I'm sorry, but the president's dead. And so that's the way that all happened.
I just get shivers. I mean, it was such a sad day for American history, but I get shivers just listening to it, and then knowing that we were just down there and saw it, and you get shivers just seeing the site all these years later. I can only imagine what you go through, and we want to.
It affected the rest of my life. So, with that, just those few seconds, those about 6 seconds. So that was what it took from the first shot to the final shot.
Oh. I would imagine that you have had to relive this more times than anyone has had to relive a trauma by retelling the story. Did you have some type of special debriefing because it was the president?
Unfortunately, no. When we got to the hospital, the agents that had been protecting President Kennedy, when we realized he was now dead, all went immediately to Vice President Johnson. Myself and my assistant, Paul Landis, stayed with Mrs. Kennedy, and our supervisor stayed with us because he was the one that was in charge of the trip, and he was going to be the one that had to answer to any hearing or anything that was being held, Mr. Kellerman. And so we remained with the president's body all through the period of time we were in Parkland, transported the body to Love Field, carried the casket and the body up onto the Air Force One, flew to Andrews Air Force outside of Washington, then transported the body by vehicle from Andrews to Bethesda Naval Hospital, where an autopsy was performed during the night. And by around 4 o'clock the next morning, we accompanied the body back to the White House, where the president's body and casket were placed in the East Room on a catafalque, just similar to the one that they had built for Abraham Lincoln in 1865.
Okay, we would like to take a quick break, and then we have just a few more questions for you after this. So stick around with Ladies of Another View on Beck.
Jeez, what a mess. Look at that. There's roof stuff everywhere. It's so embarrassing. Ruins the neighborhood. Come on, humans. Let's get this fixed.
Don't let your roof go to the dogs. Call America's Best Contractors for your free estimate.
Need a new woof?
After checking with the rest, go with the best. America's Best Contractors. 258-2412. Online at americasbestcontractorsincorporated.com.
Hop in the rig and go down the road with me. We'll cover local and national stories that impact you. What happens with national debt? Does anybody even care anymore? Do you think Governor Burgum truly understands the legislative process?
You know, I think he's got a better understanding now than he did 2 years ago.
Why in the world are we having a conversation about being anti-vaccination? Down the Road with Joel Heitkamp weekdays at 5:30 Central on Beck News and online at beck.news.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm gonna pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Ever been in a cave before?
It's our first time.
All right.
Where are you going?
I'll see you at the car!
How will we?
The car! Your offer has been accepted. Ever bought a house before?
It's our first time.
All right.
Where are you going?
I'll see you at the closing.
But how will we?
The closing!
Hey everybody, I'm Doug Billings, your host of The Right Side with Doug Billings on Beck News. We bring you high-profile guests, ladies and gentlemen, exclusive guests. Now, you're not going to see these guests in most of the mainstream media outlets. Another thing that I do here is give guests a platform to speak freely. You're not going to see me censor anybody. Please join us, won't you? Weeknights right here on Beck TV and online at beck.news. Cheers.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Beck. No, we didn't change our clothes. These are actually pre-recorded Zoom interviews that we had with Clint. We invited him on for the Hometown show, and he agreed to stay to talk a little bit about the history of the JFK assassination. But Carmen, we were just down in Dallas. Your thoughts?
It was just surreal to know that we just saw the site. We just saw what happened. We felt it, and to have him describe it, I just have chills through the whole thing.
It was just, like you said, very surreal even while we were there. But let's pick up where we left off with Clint Hill.
I can just tell that it's not an easy thing for you yet.
Well, from after I retired from the Secret Service in 1976 or 1975, and then I went into a deep depression. I didn't want to talk to anybody, didn't want to see anybody, didn't want to go anywhere. And that lasted for 6 years. And then with the help of a doctor, I started to come out of it. But I really never got out of it until 2009, when I was asked to do an interview with Lisa McCubbin for a book that a friend of mine was writing. He had also been an agent. It was called The Kennedy Detail. And I had been in Dallas, and he had not. And so I was the one that they wanted to talk with. And so after that interview, Ms. McCubbin, at the very end, asked for my phone number, which I reluctantly gave to her. And from that point on, she started to call me to get additional details. And over the course of about a year, we became very good friends by phone. She was living overseas in Doha, Qatar, and I was in Virginia. And so that book was then published, and then asked me to go out with them to publish it on their book tour. It was very difficult for me to talk about it. But I began to realize anyway, the more I talked about it, the better I felt. And so in those days, I would have broken down a couple times during just discussing it. But now it's still very emotional, but at least I can talk about it.
I think there's so many people that need to know that we need to know that there is help for anyone that suffers depression through trauma.
What had happened was I was going through a period, I had PTSD. In those days, nobody called it that. And we didn't have any counseling at all. No help whatsoever. We just had to deal with it on our own, and it just had to keep working. And so I tell people who are now come back from, for example, from Afghanistan or Iraq and have been through some horrendous turmoil, that the best thing they can do to help themselves is to find somebody they trust, their wife, their sweetheart, their priest, their rabbi, whoever it might be, and talk about what is really bothering them, what's causing their problems. And the more they talk about it and get it out, the better they're going to feel. But it's the only way to overcome the problem of PTSD.
Amen. Right. Amen. Wow. And so as far as the book tour went, did you struggle quite a bit when people came up and asked you specific questions? How did that book tour go?
Oh, sure. Certain portions of it, I would just tear up. I just couldn't hardly talk. And I just have to wait for a while, and then I'd get myself back together. But it was horrible. And I've had to apologize to people because I'm sure they, didn't realize that I was going through this PTSD.
For years.
So, we wrote at that time, Lisa McCubbin and myself began to write a book. I didn't really want to, but they encouraged me to. She said to me, you know, Clint, she said, you could write a book about your time with Mrs. Kennedy and make it a tribute to her. You don't have to tell all the sleazy stuff that people are wanting to know, if there is any. And so I finally agreed, and we wrote a book that was entitled Mrs. Kennedy and Me. And that book was released in 2012, and it became a New York Times bestseller. And that, we went around talking about that book, and during the course of that book tour was when it really helped me more than anything else, because I had to talk about it. I had to confront the issues, and I was doing so in public with an audience. If they had questions, I wanted to be able to answer them, and I did. And that was the most beneficial thing I could have done and did. And I'm so grateful to Lisa McCubbin for convincing me to write that book and work with me to make sure it was what exactly we wanted. It was completely factual, no room for error. So we were very fortunate. I was very fortunate to have her help me, and she has continued. We've written 2 other books since then. We wrote 5 Days in November, which is about the assassination. And then we wrote 5 Presidents, about my entire time at the White House on protective assignments and my entire history, really, in the Secret Service. And they all became New York Times bestsellers. So now we're working on another book. It's going to be called Traveling with Mrs. Kennedy. And so I guess maybe you don't know that Mrs. Kennedy spent a great deal of time away from the White House. We were either in Middleburg, Virginia, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, Palm Beach, Florida, New York City, or overseas somewhere, or some country. And it was a wonderful experience for me. When I initially got the assignment with Mrs. Kennedy, I was really upset, didn't want that job. I did not want to be assigned to a First Lady, because I knew that in the past, First Ladies didn't do anything. They went to fashion shows, had luncheons, maybe watched a ballet, and I didn't want any part of that. I wanted to be where the action was.
Sure.
Well, it turned out the action was with Mrs. Kennedy, because we were constantly in a state of motion.
Right.
Yeah, and she's as beautiful on the inside as she is on the outside. She's so eloquent and just so graceful, and I just probably the best First Lady we've ever had.
I think so. She's so intelligent, athletic, and a wonderful parent to those 2 kids. She really was concerned about them growing up to be spoiled because they were presidential children. I told her there's not much you can do to that. You know, they're going to be presidential children all their lives. So, I mean, you're going to have to accept some of that. But she tried her best to make sure that they didn't really become too spoiled. And they turned out remarkably well. But she was a wonderful parent and a wonderful wife. She was really hard at work trying to take as much off of the president as could be, that he'd come back from the office in the evening and she'd arrange a little private dinner with him and some very close friends. Not a lot of people, just a few. And they could really forget the office for maybe a half hour to an hour. And then for him, it was back to work. But she did everything she could to make it as easy as possible.
Just to have some normalcy, just a normal, everyday, honey, I'm home kind of day, I guess.
Well,
and Clint, you brought up...
People don't realize what the president's really like. I mean, it's a 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week job. I mean, then they say they go on vacation. They're maybe away from the White House, but the telephone's right there. All the aides and assistants are all there. There's a constant movement of paper. I mean, it's never a dull moment. I mean, they don't really have any time for themselves. Very little.
Can you tell us, Clint, you brought up Mrs. Kennedy, and I was going to ask you, after the shooting, were you then still with her For how long? How much did you continue on a detail? Because we've heard, that I'm assuming she still had Secret Service protection even after she left the White House. Would that be correct?
Yeah, she was the first lady at that time to ever have it after she left the White House. They immediately decided to give her protection and the children. So they asked her who she wanted. And she listed the agents that had been with the children to be there with the children. And then she listed myself. She wanted me to be with her. And I stayed with her for 1 full year, from November of 1963, at the time of the assassination, until just after the presidential election in 1964. Then I went back to the White House, and I was assigned to the White House detail with President Johnson in office.
I see.
Wow.
That is just an amazing story, and I'm just in awe that you can talk about it as well as you can, and I can't even imagine what that was like, having been, like we said, when we were there, and just trying to imagine everything that went on, and just the chaos and am I doing the right thing? Where do I go from here? I don't know if you even recollect that on a conscious level, but I picture all of you just kind of in, what do we do here? We've got to protect them, and we don't know where the enemy is. We don't know where the danger is. Did you go through a lot of that at the time?
Sure. We went through that, and we went through, we grieved by ourselves alone, and we tried to figure out why it happened, how it happened, who it was, but we knew we had to do better. It was just a matter of, we each took stock of what we had done, and we tried to better ourselves. We all had this sense of guilt, because our responsibility was to keep the president alive, and we were not able to do that. And that's what really ate at me, because, like I had said before, when my father, taught me, you do a job until it's completely finished. You don't finish it halfway, and you do it to the best of your ability. And in this case, I wasn't able to finish that job. So it just killed me.
All right, Clint, we're going to take a quick little break, and then we'll come back and we'll just kind of wrap up about my hometown right here on Ladies of Another View on Beck.
Since opening in Hebron in 1940, Dakota Community Bank and Trust has been your hometown bank. Our mission has been to provide modern banking convenience with old-fashioned hometown service. We've grown with the communities we serve through year-round events, countless sponsorships, and nearly 7,000 hours of volunteering each year. Learn more about our 80-year history at dakotacommunitybank.com.
Hop in the rig and go down the road with me. We'll cover local and national stories that impact you. What happens with national debt? Does anybody even care anymore? Do you think Governor Burgum truly understands the legislative process?
I think he's got a better understanding now than he did 2 years ago.
Why in the world are we having a conversation about being anti-vaccination? Down the Road with Joel Heitkamp, weekdays at 5:30 Central on Beck News and online at beck.news.
Respect, innovation, trust, and excellence. These core values can be seen in every building built by Straightway Construction. In the community for over 15 years, Straightway Construction has become the premier construction company for commercial projects. From dirt to design and framing to finish, Straightway Construction is your #1 choice. You won't have to look far to find a project that has that Straightway touch. Call them today or go online to straightwayconstruction.com and let them make your vision a reality.
Jeez, what a mess. Look at that. There's roof stuff everywhere. It's so embarrassing. Ruins the neighborhood. Come on, humans. Let's get this fixed.
Don't let your roof go to the dogs. Call America's Best Contractors for your free estimate.
Need a new woof?
After checking with the rest, go with the best. America's Best Contractors. 258-2412. Online at americasbestcontractorsincorporated.com.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got my pillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm gonna pass the savings directly on to you. Go to MyPillow.com right now to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you can get my premium MyPillows regularly $69.98, now just $29.98, the lowest price ever.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Beck. We're finishing up our conversation with Clint Hill from Washburn, North Dakota, part of the My Hometown series. This is kind of the after hours. Clint, tell us a little bit about why you insisted on getting your Rough Rider Award right there in Washburn when you could have received it in Medora or the Capitol or wherever else. Just tell us about that.
Washburn's my hometown, and that's where I wanted to be. That's where I grew up. I wanted to honor the town as much as I could, and there wasn't much I could do. But when the governor announced that I was going to be the recipient of this Rough Rider Award, they asked me where I would like to have it done, and I immediately said, Washburn, North Dakota. And it just turns out that the Lewis and Clark facility just west of Washburn was available. They had space for such an event, and it turned out remarkably well. People came from all over the state that were invited, that knew me, that I knew, and it was so thoughtful and kind to the governor. Then I went immediately. Lisa McCullum was with me, and her father had flown out to be with us to see this. We immediately went to Bismarck after the ceremony, and my portrait was hung in the huge state capitol. And that evening we had dinner with the governor and his wife and the Chief Justice of the North Dakota Supreme Court. And so it was a wonderful event, and they did a wonderful job, and I just could not be more proud than I am of the way it was done and the people of North Dakota.
Wonderful. And so if you wanted to tell our viewers, what do you think is so important about keeping our small towns alive?
Well, I think they have a better understanding of each other when they grew up like that. I think that we just one big melting pot. We were all, sure, we went to different churches. We had different ideas, different thoughts. But when we had something to do and we wanted to work together, we did cooperate and work together. We played together. I think it made for a wonderful relationship between each and every one of us. Washburn itself is kind of a historic town. Had many things that were historical in nature. And after World War II, some people I knew were killed in World War II. Gus Lindell, who was a lawyer, D.J. Nelson, and Paul Fisher, they were all killed in World War II. Young, some were very, very young, 18 years old. So I never forget, on Memorial Day, they used to have a parade in downtown Washburn. And I mean, it was started in the west end of town. And they would have the high school band march. The American Legion would be there with the flags and honor guards and everything. And it was that time of year when the lilacs were out in bloom, flowers all over the place, and we would go from all the way through downtown and then go up to the cemetery where they'd have services up there and pay a tribute to all those who had died in the war. It just was a wonderful patriotic memory that I will never forget, and I I wish they would still be able to do that. I don't think they do anymore.
Well, maybe we can revitalize that. Maybe we can talk
There
to
you go.
Washburn and get that parade back going, because I think it's so important to show your pride and just show your patriotism. And this week is Flag Day week, and so there's not a better time to talk about our patriotism and our country and what we can do.
I think
for
it'd
our
be
country.
wonderful if they do those kinds of things again. Each of the, not just Washburn, all the little small towns. They have their own history, and they should dwell with it and really work together as a community and make their little town the best they can make it.
And I think your experience of being, you were on the world stage basically with the First Lady and the President, and just your travels and who you've met and what you've done with your life, and being able to bring that small town value set that you have into those situations. I would believe that's part of why the First Lady wanted to keep you, because you are North Dakota proud. You're small community proud, where you have those values that you can bring. And you know, she knew you were willing to die for her. I bet money on that.
Well, she
'Cause I know you
trusted me. She trusted me implicitly. I was asked to do things that were not quite into my
job description.
yeah, completely not in my job description, and I did them to the best of my ability. And in my career, I've met every president in the United States. Personally, met them right up to the current president, Joe Biden.
Wonderful.
I've met kings, queens, princes, and princesses, popes. I mean, it just non-ending. And I have been so fortunate. There's just no way I could ever describe really the wonderful things I've been able to witness, the travel that I've had. I have been to almost every country there is and spent considerable time there, either doing advance work or setting up trips for various people, for presidents and vice presidents. So I have been so fortunate. I'm just a lucky guy.
So you've had all of these wonderful experiences, and I'm sure that some of the people that are listening would like to know how they can get involved in that type of career path.
Well, I give advice. I say, study hard, work hard, keep your nose clean, don't get in trouble. Doesn't pay off in the end. But really be competitive, participate in as much as you can in high school and in college. In high school, I played in the band. I mean, I remember in the basketball team, I was on the basketball team, but at halftime, all the rest of the guys would go to the dressing room. I go get my sweat jacket, put it on, because the band had to perform at halftime for the people there in Washburn at Washburn High School gymnasium. So the band would play at halftime. When the halftime was over, I'd take my jacket off and go back and play basketball. I mean,
Right.
I acted in plays. I sang in the choir at the church. You had to do everything you could, because that's how you learn and participate.
Well, Clint, we really appreciate the information that you shared with us, having this conversation today, because it is so important to hang on to our history and learn from it. And all of these stories are slowly fading away, and it's just not fair to our history. We need to keep this to the forefront, and we need to save our small towns. We need to get out and talk about them and tell the great things that are available and the good lifestyles. Nothing better than being homegrown in a small town in North Dakota.
Amen.
Well, that's the finest thing to say. By the way, I like your boots.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. Well, you come back to North Dakota, you promise to come see us, and we'll get you on, and we might even find some boots for you. How about that?
Well, I still have friends and family in North Dakota.
Excellent.
Dennis Hill is a cousin of mine. He lives in Bismarck. So.
Wonderful.
Great.
Well, check us out next time you're in town, and we would love to sit down and visit with you. But we have to say goodbye for now. So next time on, we'll see you all next time on Ladies of Another View on Back.
Well, it's been nice talking to you and to the people in North Dakota.
respect, innovation, trust, and excellence. These core values can be seen in every building built by Straightway Construction. In the community for over 15 years, Straightway Construction has become the premier construction company for commercial projects. From dirt to design and framing to finish, Straightway Construction is your #1 choice. You won't have to look far to find a project that has that Straightway touch. Call them today or go online to straightwayconstruction.com and let them make your vision a reality.
Deciding how to promote your business can be hard. Visit the professionals at Dakota Promotions and Printing and let them help you through your struggle. Dakota Promotions provides promotional items and apparel from corporate gifts to team shirts and everything in between. With quick turnaround times and friendly service, they are your best choice. And best yet, you're shopping local. Visit them online at dakotapromo.com or stop in their showroom at 320 West Main in Mandan. Dakota Promotions, delivering promotions just for you.
Every great pizza has a secret. At New York To Go, that secret lies in our perfectly recreated New York water, the key ingredient to making our signature New York-style pizza. We also feature Heroes, with the region's only Hero meat spit, plus Nathan's hot dogs, calzones, and our delicious jumbo buffalo wings. Try a 14-inch or our special giant 20-inch pizza tonight. You gotta know how to fold them if you want to hold them. New York To Go, we deliver for you.
40 years ago, Aero Service Team started with one truck and lots of hard work.
Times may have changed, but the hard work that we put in to get your lives back in order after fire, water, and disaster hasn't.
Over the years, we've seen so many families lose their belongings due to water and fire damage. Restoring homes back to the original state has made every hour of hard work well worth it.
Thank you for trusting our family with yours.
When disaster strikes, you only have to make one call. Aero Service Team does it all.
Hey Bucks fans, if you're planning an outing, birthday, or employee appreciation night, then bring your group out to the Buck Stop for a night of fast-paced, high-scoring football. Your group will receive discounted tickets, options for reserved seating, scoreboard messages, VIP services, swag, and a space to gather during the game. You can also participate in pre-game ceremonies, halftime entertainment, in-game contests, and more. Call 701-595-0771 or visit bismarckbucks.com/tickets. All GA is first come, first serve. We'll see you on the turf. Go Bucks!
I'm Rick Becker from No Apologies. Welcome to your after hours oasis of sanity. How can these people not see that they're just clowns?
We help simplify and educate you on things going on in the legislature and around the country.
Asking the hard-hitting questions.
But also having Lee Stack and Sid and Marty Croft stuff, and we've talked about that sometimes. It's bad.
Watch us weeknights at 9 Central on Beck News and online at beck.news.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Beck. And what fascinating information or interviews with Clint Hill that we just had. Can't thank him enough for coming on. It started with my hometown, and he agreed to go into more detail, so we really appreciate that. But this is kind of funny because we're talking about my hometown, and that's what it was all about. I was out in Killdeer trying to get information for the next My Hometown, and one of the gals sitting at the table, I said, well, you know, you need to watch today because the Clint Hill interview will be on. And she goes, I knew him when he played basketball. I used to be a cheerleader. And so she said he was really good, very athletic, and just a very nice, just a gentleman, and everybody knew who he was even back then.
Wow.
So
he's a great storyteller. It clearly took a lot of courage to be able to tell that story again and again, and it probably is almost therapeutic. But I have to give him props for telling it so well.
Well, we do have a few photos of Clint with the Kennedys, and so let's just we can talk while
is that him in the middle? Do we
That's
know?
him in the middle.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? A nice, handsome young man.
He was a handsome young man. There's no doubt about it.
And just, you know, he was just part of their lives. It would be like having her brother hanging out.
Sure.
And here was something that he had autographed. Mr. Hill, are you happy in your work? Right. Jacqueline Kennedy. So that's pretty sweet. And there he is with her and the children. And just iconic photos, just wonderful. And there he is. And they both look so happy and so comfortable around each other.
Right. Yeah, that's got to be so important.
Yep.
The presidential candidates that I've met have their dedicated people. They know them.
Yeah, I want to quickly say that was Lisa McCubbin. She is the author that she really broke through and got him the help that he helped himself through being able to tell the story. And so kudos to her as well, but has helped write these books and whatnot. So I just wanted to point that out. But 5 different books, and if you want any of these books, you can get them at any bookstore, or log on to ClintHillSecretService.com, and you can pick up any one of those books and read them and get the history firsthand. Like he said, it is the truth. You know, there's so many stories out there. There's so many conspiracies. And it's like none of us were there, and we can't second guess what happened.
Exactly.
And there's a conspiracy for everything going on.
Pretty much. I actually need some new ones, so send them in, please. All mine seem to be coming true.
Right. And you know, everybody says that in my generation, where were you when Kennedy got shot? It's one of those moments. And so if any of our viewers have thoughts on that and you want to let us know about them, that's wonderful, because we all got them. You know?
We do. We do. I remember when Robert Kennedy was shot, and I have a brother named Robert, and I thought my brother had been killed because my mom was crying, and she said Robert was shot. And I took it to mean my little brother was shot. And so she was a huge Kennedy fan, and kudos to her. He was a great president. So we only have a few seconds left. We just want to thank everyone for joining us and hanging out with us every afternoon. And if you enjoy the My Hometown series, go ahead and let us know what town we should hit next. The next one's going to be Killdeer and then New Salem. So we do have some things that are already pre-scheduled.
Super exciting.
Right. And I just want to say, praise God for small town values, because they built Clint Hill. They built a lot of people in this state, and we're so proud to be part of that. So.
Absolutely. Well, with that, I guess we will see you next time on Ladies of Another View on Back